apple raspberry jam combines two of my favorite flavors, apples and raspberries. One of the things that I like about this so much is that the apples, which are a little bit less expensive and easier to come by, actually make it so that my raspberries go farther, but I still have that lovely raspberry flavor. What I start with on this is making a syrup. And I make the syrup with 2 cups of water and 9 cups of sugar. This jam doesn't use any pectin, so it's a little bit different. And then I'll put this on the stove and I'll bring it up to 228 degrees. I really recommend a digital thermometer for this, but you could use just a regular candy thermometer as well. While the syrup is coming up to temperature, it's a really good time to prepare the apples. Now, I use my core slicer peeler for this. I really like it because it's very fast. You need to do about 6 apples or so, and it should equal 6 cups worth of chopped apples, which is super easy when you do the apple core peeler, because then you can just kind of cut down into the center all around the apple and you have small, lovely pieces that will work well for this jam. Now I'll add my 6 cups of chopped apples and I'll allow it to boil for 2 minutes. With it back up to a boil, I'll set my timer for 2 minutes and decrease my heat a little bit just so that it doesn't go over. And I'll continue to stir because otherwise this could boil over really easily and burn with the amount of sugar that's in it. Now I'll add my 3 cups of raspberries. Next I'll add 1 cup of light corn syrup. Not my favorite ingredient to deal with just because it's so sticky. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, half of a teaspoon of butter. This is an optional step, but it does reduce the foaming. 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cloves, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of allspice. I'll then mix these together well and return it to the stove. I want it to boil for an additional 20 minutes. So I won't start the timer until it starts to boil again. During the 20 minutes, I occasionally come and stir it, but it doesn't require a constant stirring. I just have to make sure that it doesn't boil over. The raspberries are starting to break down, making it a darker syrup. Then I take the jam off the heat and I'll add 1/8 of a teaspoon of vanilla. It's not very much, but it makes all the difference. Then I'll mix that together well. If I was to add the vanilla while it was cooking, then a lot of that vanilla flavor would be lost. I'll then fill my pint-sized jars up to 1/4 of an inch of headspace, which is the space from the top of the food to the top of the jar. I really like how this one looks because it not only has the apple chunks floating in it, but it also has all those raspberry seeds, which I actually like the raspberry seeds. I know not everyone feels that way. I feel like raspberry seeds look like confetti in a jar. When I'm doing salsas, that's how I feel about the minced garlic. I'll then use a clean, damp cloth to wipe off the rim of the jars. This just makes it so that if any of the jam got on the edge, it won't interfere with the seal. I really like to use the crocheted washcloths for this because they have the ridges to them and I feel like that does a better job of cleaning it. And then I apply the lids and rings until they're fingertip tight. I'll then process these in my boiling water bath for 15 minutes if I'm at sea level. I'm at 1,200 feet, so I'll go for 20. I won't start my timer until after the rolling boil is hit. Now that the timer's gone off, I'll remove the lid and turn off the heat and let it cool for 5 minutes. I then pull out the jars and put them on a heat-resistant surface about 1 to 2 inches apart so that they cool really quickly. Then I'll let them sit for 24 hours until they get a really good seal. After that point, I'll remove the rings and use warm soapy water to wash off the outside of the jar and store them in a cool, dry, dark location and eat them within the next 1 to 3 years. Now it's time for the taste tester and I'm gonna try some on my sourdough bread. I just grabbed a little chunk of it. Ever since I told my kids that bread actually tastes better if you tear it as opposed to slice it, this is how I end up having to have my bread, unless it's for sandwiches or something. But fresh bread just gets ripped here. All right. With all of the spices that it has a really complex flavor. Mine's still warm, so it's pretty soft. It will set more, but but it won't be a hard set, not like the pectin jams are, which is okay by me because I really like to use this like on waffles and crepes and pancakes, although I'll eat it on toast too.